Hi guys, welcome back to my Stranded Alien Dawn hard mode playthrough. If you haven't been watching along so far, this isn't really a let's play because I suck at doing let's plays. This is me narrating a hard mode gameplay that I'm doing at the moment. Hopefully it'll help you if you're having trouble with the game, and maybe it'd be interesting to watch as well. In the previous videos, I got the base set up and then I made my life hell with the way I'd set up my defense. So in this video, obviously I do fix that. But I also address a few things that I didn't get done in the previous videos because of those problems. Things like getting the crafting hall set up, starting to do explorations, eventually getting the relaxation room set up as well. So what I'm going to do in this video is, rather than doing things sequentially, I'm going to group up bits of footage together just so it doesn't get confusing, because, you know, I worked on the defense of the base over a really long period of time, and I worked on the crafting and things like that. You know, it would just be confusing going back and forth. The first thing I want to talk about is the crafting hall, because I really didn't get any of that done in the previous videos. So what you can see is I'm putting out multiple craft tables. I think this is a really important thing to do when you get to later in the game. You're probably going to have multiple people crafting. I also tend to have all of my other workers set to craft if they've got nothing else to do. It just helps ticking things over. Now you can see that what I'm doing is I'm putting out 4 crafting tables, and then I'm also thinking about how people are going to need to get materials for what they're crafting. One of those stockpiles I set to just have nothing, because at this point I didn't actually have nanotubes, but I was planning to do the carbon armor, or at least a synthetic armor. So when I did get nanotubes, I wanted to have a storage spot for them, like right next to all of the crafting tables. This kind of encapsulates really like the most important thing I've found about the crafting is have multiple tables, just so that you have one table for each piece, which means that when people get freed up, you can have people working on multiple things at the same time. It generally increases your output, rather than having, say, one person walking over to the tailoring bench, and if you're running it automatically, that means you're only ever going to get it done in sequential order. Whereas if you've got multiple of them going, you can have it kind of running in parallel. The other thing as well is the time it takes to walk back and forth from things. That does actually significantly add up, believe it or not. I know it might seem like a minor thing, but if someone's walking, you know, half a building away and then half a building back every time they're picking something up, it really does add up to time. So when I've got my tailoring benches set up, I have a set of stockpiles along the back wall that has all my fabrics. I've obviously got that stockpile that I'm going to be putting my nanotubes on eventually. And I make sure that when they're dropping the thing off into the, what are they called? Wardrobes. That's what I'm looking for. They're not really having to walk very far at all. It just seems to increase efficiency. I also do the same thing with the soldering benches. I make sure that I've got 2 of them just so that I can double up on my production of electronics and CPUs and power cells if I need to. I also add in a couple of workbenches so that I can keep myself in bandages and basic weapons if I need to. Later on, I also put in a freezer and then move over my fermentation barrels, because I do have the fermenting fuel from insect meat technology. And finally, on that back wall where I've got my soldering benches, I also then put down some shelves that follow the same principle. So I'm going to keep all my silicon stored there, and my fuel, electronics, CPUs, power cells, things like that. And I make sure I've got my printers there. So, you know, when people are actually redoing the printers, they literally just walk over, pick up some fuel, pick up some metal or whatever's needed, and just slap them into the printer when they're really close to them. It just keeps the handling time down. I also move all of my forges out to right near my crafting area. So earlier on, you probably did see that I had a roofed area over here. But what I did was made sure that when someone's handling, it really doesn't take them long to get the resources where they need to be, which just makes the handling easier. So the forges, I make sure that I'm keeping my ore and my scrap metal nearby. And I'm also keeping my hay there, but I just throw my wood pile over there because I kind of just want to get rid of that big massive stockpile that I've got over by the house. And there's not really much more that I can add in about the crafting hall, really. It's just that's the way that I go about doing it, trying to make it as efficient as possible. And it's not only about efficiency for the people that are crafting, but the people that are doing the handling involved with the crafting. Like, as you can see here, Emmeline really didn't have to travel far for her to do the handling. So that meant that she could do more handling in a given time and get the materials into the place they need to be really quickly. A lot of the crafting later on does kind of, if you get the right technologies, that does come down to handling. Things like electronics printing, the fuel fermenting. And obviously, you've got the forges as well. By doing that, you just make it all so much more efficient. Later on in the game, you can make it to the point where, you're taking advantage of all the fleeting moments when people have got something they're not doing anything at the time. Well, if you give them a crafting job when they're not doing anything, they'll just run over, pick something up, start crafting. And it may not seem like it adds much, but it really does add a lot to the production that you can do. And it kind of reduces the amount of people that you need dedicated to crafting, because if everyone else is chipping in a little bit, it means that you can have your dedicated crafters who are just keeping things flowing. And then, whenever people have got a bit of time, they'll just add to that production. It just makes everything work nice and smoothly. Once I got my carbon armor research done, I switched all of my production over from clothes to the armor. I don't bother making t-shirts if they're wearing carbon armor, because if they're going to get heat stroke in the carbon armor, then the t-shirt isn't going to help at all, really, to be honest. I was also sending Ken out on expeditions at this point as well. Every time it was safe and we just had an attack, so I probably wasn't going to get one, I'd send him out. I don't send him on things like the cargo pods, because although they can give you nice stuff, they don't really help with research. I do send him on all of the black box and security signals and distress signals, and obviously anything that could be another survivor, I send him on that as well. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to get the electronics printing research on this game, but I did get another couple of nice techs involving the battery life and the sleeping tech. It took me a while to get round to it, but later on I actually started attacking the alien nest so that I could get hold of some easy carbon nanotubes. Once you kill all the aliens in a nest and you kill the nest itself, you can go in and mine all the other nodes for 100 carbon nanotubes at a pop. I started off just taking everyone over there because I didn't know how tough it would be. I mean, it is hard mode and everything. But once Ken had access to a sniper rifle, I just went in with him and I just kited them, and it was really quite easy, to be honest. Nothing in the nest will catch up a normal speed survivor, so you can just kite them. Once they start getting close, just move back a bit and carry on sniping. It just means you don't have to bring the entire of your survivors over just to take out one nest. Takes a little bit longer, but it's less micromanagement and it's easier, to be honest. I'm sure you saw it in the earlier clip that I had to set one of the nodes to be observed, just like with metal and silicon. Once you've observed it, you can mine it, and you get 100 carbon nanotubes per node, which is a lot. Especially if you are getting people to replace their armor before it's completely gone, and then you can break it down and get some more back. 100 carbon nanotubes goes a really long way, and just one nest can basically get your entire base fitted out with carbon armor. Because you'll end up getting a couple of 100 carbon nanotubes, and then as the armor needs to be replaced, you just break it down again. It's actually surprisingly sustainable. The next big thing, obviously, that I had to deal with was the attacks that were coming in. After the previous video, I really did realize that I needed some way to deal with all of the small creatures that were coming in, or at least hold up the ranged creatures until I could deal with them and maybe make them less dangerous. My first idea was, well, okay, they are coming up close to the turrets. Why don't I just throw down some traps? And that just didn't work. But I did at this point kind of twig, wait a second, they're still pathing in. Why don't I just throw down some flamethrowers? They'll hit the flamethrowers that they go through, should clear most of the stuff out. Yeah, I'd like to say it's the last time I derped out on figuring stuff out, but it's not. It's really not. So once I did that, I obviously knew that the Shriekers would try and attack the flamethrowers from a distance, and they would try and get an angle on them. So my first sort of design was to make a sort of pathway where they wouldn't be able to hit the flamethrowers from the outside, and they would have to get into the range of the flamethrowers to actually hit them. That worked out pretty well, but there were a couple of issues with that design. I noticed that they did like to go around the outside, anything melee even, especially the big creatures. They like to go around the outside and attack it from the outside walls. Now, this is another moment where I kind of derped out, because rather than me sitting there going, well, why don't I inset those inside the walls? That would clearly work. No. What we did, what Whammy Co. here did, was to go, I know, I'll put prongs everywhere, because that will probably not make the pathing glitch out, and then I can put traps around, and that should be enough for any. No. It really didn't work. I did finally kind of stumble onto, I was like, I mean, it took me far too long to figure it out, but I was like, oh, okay, right, yeah, why don't I just inset them inside the wall? I did also spend far too long figuring out that I couldn't put the flamethrowers in the little pockets that I made for them without me having a wall at the back. Yeah, once again, that's like the third massive derp that I had on this, and I spent far too long swearing at the computer about that. But once that was done and I figured that out, it actually worked really well. Like the first time I tested it out and they came in, I thought, okay, yeah, I really like this. I made sure I had enough space to have the missile turrets set on the inside, and that really did work out well. So at that point, I did know that this was kind of the defense that I wanted to go for. I had noticed at this point, though, as well, that I was getting a lot of attacks that were really up close to the wall of my base. Now, I had made my base wall quite far out just so that anything that was attacking wasn't going to, it wasn't going to be able to see things really close and it would path around. But with the fact that we now get like large creatures in most of the attacks, I decided that what I wanted to go for was a floating wall, because that way, if they did attack the wall, it gave me a little bit of time to get in there. And if small creatures attacked the wall, they would follow it around the outside. That worked pretty well. Later on in the game, I did end up putting some traps on the outside wall. That might not be shown in this video, but you'll see it in the next video that I put traps on that outside wall just to stop any big creatures that did come up to the wall. The floating wall did work pretty damn well, though, and it did force things to path around it. It was around about this time I decided to address the size of my farms. I realised that I still had way too many products, even for 6 people, with the size of the farms that I had. So I reduced it down to 2 10x5 fields for each one. I could still then set one of them not to be harvested if it was too much. And it also meant I had a smaller wall and a smaller amount of traps there for things to either spawn on top of or for it to escalate the attacks. I was trying to learn from my mistakes from the previous video. I also decided to move my energy grid closer to the middle of the base, just in case we did get things spawn right on top of the base, as we did have big things in those spawns now. I had been upgrading my energy grid over time, but as you can see, not a huge amount, maybe double the amount of graphene solar panels and the wind turbines. Later on in the playthrough, I think I added a few more into that as I started adding more turrets, but not at this point in the game. I also decided at this point that I'd been getting attacks happening on the sides of that area, or things spawning right on top of them, so I was just going to go for one entrance, slim it down, reduce the chance of that happening, but also reduce the size of the attacks if I've got less defences there. To do that, I started off by putting some gates on each of the entrances, and then a gate where I wanted my new thing to be. I did measure out and make sure that the missile turret, I was going to move my fences back and the missile turret wouldn't hit the fences. That allowed me to build the defense up but have it closed off, so things would still path until I got it done. And then when I got it done, I could just close the other gates and everything would go through that main area there. That went pretty well, but there were some issues with the pathing with the outward cropping corner there as I was getting rid of those other 2 areas. They just don't seem to like outcrops like that. I'm pretty sure that was what was causing the problem with my really derpy prong idea. Apart from the fact it was a derpy idea, but it went pretty well. I did get some big things attacking the fences or the walls there, but it wasn't anything that couldn't be dealt with, and the mass majority of stuff did path into the area I wanted it to. I was really happy with the defense, so I decided that it was time to bulk it up a little bit. The first thing that I did was build some pavilions. That was inspired by the fact that I got a solar flare happen, and I thought, oh, it wouldn't be good if I got attacked by a load of flyers right now while I've got no turrets. Moments later, I got attacked by flyers while I had no turrets, so that was quite serendipitous. I did also realise that I had derped out a little bit. I'd forgotten to put some traps around the outside of the flamethrowers so that large creatures that just charged through weren't stopped. That also highlighted another derp that I hadn't put a motion sensor so that the turrets would attack the things that weren't caught in the traps that weren't there. So yeah, so that's, I think, derp number 5 now, but I was still happy with the defense, and those were easy things to fix. I did actually start working on the kitchen area, but I'm not sure that's something for the scope of this video. The reason I say that is that I'm at 10 hours of footage recorded, more than 10 hours of footage that I've sifted through for this, and I haven't got it completed within that time. I know that it's going to be in the next video because I've got the footage for that, and it's definitely completed in there. There is a way that I like to build my kitchens, so that's like a little bit of an involved explanation on that. There's a reason for it, so that'll be in the next video. I'd like to apologize as well for how much time this short video kind of covered. The reason for it is that it wasn't for a case of there's lots of stuff that I'm skipping in this. It's that I was spending a lot of time with the base just ticking over while I was waiting to see how the mechanics had changed and how my defense ideas had worked. So there's a lot of time where there's just not much going on apart from me just letting the base tick over and waiting for an attack to come in. I do also want to say I'm sorry for the amount of time it's taken to get this video out. It's not been for lack of want. Long story short, my nan looks like she's in the first stages of dementia, and that means that, well, for the last couple of weeks I've had to travel over there on the regular. It's a 2.5 hour journey there and a 2.5 hour journey back, so yeah, that really eats into the time that I get to spend playing this and then editing videos, so I do apologise about that. We've got social services involved, so hopefully that's a situation that's going to get a little bit better over time, but I apologise for any slow videos over this period. Anyway, guys, with that somber thought out of the way, I hope you've enjoyed watching the video. I hope you found it useful, and if not, I hope you found it fun. Catch you all soon. Have fun.